We're happy to bring on our second Counter Intel preview of the day. We've got to talk about the Browns game. I know everybody's getting ready for the Ravens game, but this is going to be an interesting game against the Browns. This is Lane Dobbins of Browns Wire, and I was just telling the audience, Lane, before I introduced you before the break here, I was telling them that, hey, we might have been forgetting about the Browns a little bit. The Ravens are a good team. We play them on Monday, but you guys just beat the Packers, and that was a big win. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are on this team. I was trying to keep an eye out for your article on Browns Wire, but just give us kind of your review and thoughts on that game, because that was a good one for the Browns faithful here.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Ryan. Hello to the audience out there. I am Lane. We had a wonderful win yesterday after a excruciating first 55 minutes or so of football. We did not have a single point until there was less than 5 minutes left in the game. And in those 5 minutes, we somehow, out of our ass, pulled out 13 points. It was extravagant. I was in the middle of hooking up the water line to my fridge with my father-in-law at the time because I was over the game. I just wanted to get it over with, and I heard the audio, and suddenly everything went our way. We got the field goal, made it 3-10. We got a stop from Jordan Love, and then we marched down the field, scored a touchdown, tied the game. We got marched down the field on ourselves. The Packers got the ball on, I believe it was a 30-something yard attempt. And in a combined effort between Shelby Harris, our veteran defensive tackle, and Denzel Ward, who I am sure many fans out there have heard the name before, our star cornerback, they made an astounding special teams play to block the kick, and our offense showed a rare sign of life to get down the field and spike the ball with 3 seconds left. And Andre Schmidt, who we were all ready to get cut off this team after week 1, after losing almost single-handedly losing our game against the Bengals, made a beautiful 55-yard field goal. And honestly, Ryan, I have not felt this good after a Browns win since the Steelers playoff win back in 2021.
I don't blame you. This was, by the way, Lane, that was maybe the most relatable thing that's been said on the show for a while, that you were not liking how your team was playing, and then you went to hook up your dad's refrigerator. I feel like a lot of fans could relate to that. And I'm curious if you are if you're a little bit superstitious like some fans are, because were you thinking you're going to give them a little momentum by moving to the refrigerator instead of being on in front of the TV?
I wouldn't, to quote a certain media product, I am not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. However, no, it wasn't. That wasn't an act of superstition on my part. It was just a genuine act of, I wasn't interested in watching the rest of that football product until I heard the announcers announce what was going on, and then I tuned back in visually. As you can probably assume, being a Browns fan is not the most pleasant most of the time. This was our 4th win in the last 20 games. Last 20 games. This is our 4th win. For the math aficionados out there, that is a 20% clip. Not great.
So it's a little lower than you want. I like the Michael Scott quote. You also miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott, just in case people out there want to hear that one too. But yeah, you make a good point, Lane. And I know the Michigan fans, because obviously a lot of the Detroit fans here are also University of Michigan fans, and then you'd have a lot of Ohio fans and Cleveland fans that are inherently going to be Ohio State fans, and that's a big rivalry. But I always have said that if there's a team that's the most like the Lions, a team and a fan base, it's Cleveland, because the two teams were the best in the 50s, and I'm sure this is the case for you, Lane. Most of us were not alive to enjoy that run in the 50s. I certainly was not. So that was the heyday, was basically pre-Super Bowl era for both of our teams. And they flashed a little bit, but I remember when Flacco was doing that run a couple years ago, and I remember thinking, if this ends up being Flacco catching fire and getting them to the Super Bowl, a Cleveland-Detroit Super Bowl would just blow everything up. I don't know what the tickets would be for that or anything, but there are some similarities in these fan bases. They're both kind of hardworking Midwest areas, and we can relate to each other with this. The Detroit situation is a little bit better than it has been, for sure, and a little bit better than Cleveland currently, and Cleveland has had some of those years as well, but it is a relatable concept to the Detroit fan base, I think.
Yeah, we do share a unique bond in that we're the only teams to be winless in a season. That is notable for all of the wrong reasons. I actually started being a fan of the Cleveland Browns around that time for reasons that are beyond me, but I am stubborn, and I've stuck with them thus far, and I will continue to probably until the day I'm buried deep in the ground.
Lane Dobbins, a glutton for punishment here.
Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. I'm just holding on to hope of all hope that one day we can get a glimpse of what your team experienced last year. I don't believe you guys lost a game on the road last year. And what was the final record? 15-2?
15-2. Yeah, 15-2 with a lot of injuries. I know not everybody likes to do the injury talk, but that really was a big storyline of the season last year. They basically there was a point where we have a doctor that analyzes injuries for us on the show, and there was a point where legitimately there was a better 11 on the injured reserve and on the injured list than on the field for the defense. If you put those two teams against each other, that the bench 11 was better. And I've hardly ever heard of that. The Ravens kind of had a similar problem a couple years ago, but you guys have had your fair share of injuries too, and they still powered through, but it affected them in the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, we're already well on our way this year. We had our cornerback 2/3. We had a trio: Denzel Ward, who I already mentioned by name, Greg Newsome, and Martin Emerson. Martin Emerson was our starting boundary corner secondary to Denzel Ward. He blew his Achilles out in the preseason, so we've already felt the effect of injuries on our team. Especially our secondary. It is definitely of our stalwart defense that you mentioned earlier that was key in our win over the Packers. Our secondary is definitely a weak point. We also, our week 2 loss to the Ravens, we lost 41-10. A main reason why the score was ran up so much, Denzel Ward actually left the game with a cramp. Thankfully, considering his injury history, it was only a cramp and not a concussion or a soft tissue injury like we had seen with him before. But we did lose one of our starting tackles yesterday on a screen play. It was DeJuan Jones, a former Ohio State tackle. He's actually in his contract year. A defensive back hyperextended his knee going low for him in the open field on a screen play. So he's out for the season. That came out earlier today. We're feeling it. We are already feeling it.
That's a big loss, and obviously Lions fans can relate to picking up injuries so early. We're kind of in the opposite situation this year. They're waiting on some returns, Aleem McNeil and some other ones to come back later in the season, and trying to kind of buy time for that. But we got to take a quick break. I want to come back with Lane. There's a certain player, an undrafted free agent that he really liked. That is a very interesting player to me. I think Lions fans would embrace this player if he was on the team. So I want to talk to him about this player and some of the Lions that he likes. But we'll come back with Lane after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Lane Dobbins. I'm enjoying the conversation so far. There's a very wholesome quality to Lane and his football coverage here. But there's a player, Lane, that I feel like you have been drawn to in the off season and in the process. And this happens with everybody. I kind of have a similar thing. This guy's gotten now more popular, but I interviewed Isaac Tesla before the season started, before he got drafted, and talked to him about the possibility of coming to the Lions and all of that. And it's been fun to follow him because he's here. He's a local kid from this area. But I'm curious what drew you to Aiden Huntington, not to be confused with Aiden Hutchinson, who he was called during the game, a slightly different player than that, but an intriguing one nonetheless. So I'm curious what drew you to him, and you had a good piece on him as well. So I want you to talk about that.
To be completely honest, Ryan, outside of his, I covered the draft. He had an outstanding combine, but what drew me to Aiden, to dive into him before the season, before the preseason started, before he had his meteoric rise from a UDFA to making the final 53. He was one of the only UDFAs who actually returned any of my requests for an interview, to be completely honest. But that interview opened me up to understanding him as a human being, and he is a very genuine, a very energetic human. I enjoyed my conversation with him. I do not have an audio version of that, but if you guys want to go on my Twitter, the interview is actually still pinned on my profile. But back to his athleticism that drew me to him in the first place. His RAS score, for those who are not in the know, that stands for Relative Athletic Score. It is a composite grade weighing his combine measurements, his weight, height, 40-time, bench press, 3-cone, etc., against other players at his position, or positions in his case. As one of the reasons he went undrafted, he is 6 foot flat, 281 pounds. Now, neither of those measurements are what you want at either edge or defensive tackle traditionally. Between that and his rather unproductive college career, outside of some deeper analytic stats, he was overlooked in the draft process. He also went to several small schools, bouncing around through his collegiate career. But his athleticism, his RAS score, which grades from 0 to 10.0, which is a perfect score, he was in the 90. He was 9.6. I want to say 8. I don't know it to memory, Ryan. I apologize. I did not do quite as depth of research as I wanted to before your show. But his athleticism is off the charts. If he would have, he did not actually compete at the Combine in Indianapolis, but he did compete at his pro day. I know those are rather notorious for having inflated results. But if his 40 time was weighed against the defensive tackles in this class, he would have been first. And if it was weighed against the edge rushers in this class, he would have been sixth. He is a hyper athletic human being, and his only flaw was that he was not tall enough and he was not big enough. But he has proved everybody wrong. All of the draft analysts and the Browns, they saw something in this kid. And so far through the preseason and through the regular season, he had half of a sack and a QB hit on Jordan Love Sunday. He looks like a hit on a UDFA. I won't say a steal, but I do believe he will be on this team for a while. Just you guys remember the name, not Aiden Hutchinson, who I know you guys are very fond of, Aiden Huntington.
Well, I brought that up, Lane, because I was watching the game last week, 2 weeks ago, to prepare, and I think it was in that game. I watched both of them concurrently, so I don't remember which one, but they did call him Aiden Hutchinson, and that I feel like that's going to be easy to do for these broadcasters. But I agree. I think it's a name to remember. I actually, when I saw your profile on him and I watched him play for the Browns and all of that, I actually looked at this guy and I said, man, I'm surprised the Lions didn't take a run at a guy like that, because they don't get too caught up in traditional size combinations. They like the weight. They like a guy that can set the edge, and Huntington seemed like that kind of guy. And like you said, it is an accomplishment as a UDFA, undrafted free agent, to make the main roster. And I feel like your profile adds a lot of seasoning to the discussion, because you talk about all those other things, that his athletic score was good, but when you were talking about him, it reminds me of Isaac Tesla, because he had a very good athletic score at the combine as well, but he was a guy that was kind of overlooked for various reasons as well, but he also had the mental and the effort side of it, which is so key to break through from kind of that edge area in the team, not knowing if you're going to be able to make the team, not knowing what part of the roster you're going to be on, the fringes of the team. He was able to fight through because he's a high effort guy. That's the same way Huntington seems. And if you're a good locker room guy, high effort guy, then you're going to make your way onto the team. And that's what Huntington did. And I'm going to be keeping an eye on him this season, because I feel like he could be a key part of that defense.
Yeah, he's already making waves as a part of a rotational pass rush. But another reason why he made the 53 in the first place, same reason why the Lions also valued Isaac Tesla. He can contribute on special teams, and that's something that is very rarely heard of from a defensive tackle. He has been routinely the first, second, or third man to the ball on the return coverage. And to be honest with you, I know Isaac Tesla is a gunner for the Lions. I have not seen much of his tape outside of what I'm sure you have seen as well of him, the ridiculous catches he's made. You mentioned before the break Lions that I like to see. Isaac Tesla is one of them that I am keeping a keen eye on this year. Like you said, he was overlooked. Arkansas, his production was very minimal, and then he shows up to the combine, prototypical wide receiver size, 6'4", 215 pounds, runs a 4.4 40-yard dash, and everybody in my draft circles were wondering, what happened with this kid? How did they not turn him into a 1,000-yard, everybody knows his name receiver? And apparently, you guys at the Lions, Dan Campbell and some of the other hard-nosed football guys, they saw something in this kid, and that's why they traded up in the third round to get him. And I understand why they did at the time and now. Very clearly, he's a willing run blocker. He's a gritty football player, and he's good at his job. That's what gets you a long career in this league, and he's outstanding at what he's asked to do. I would love to see his role expand. I know it's hard to do on a team with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams, but he will still be a contributing piece to y'all's team.
I think they've opened the door to that here, Lane, because we were talking about this in the segment with Morgan Cannon just before you, but they cleared out Tim Patrick, and I think that was kind of his biggest impediment to playing. There's Khalif Raymond, who will be the third receiver to a degree, but he's an undersized receiver. He'll be in certain packages. Tesla fits in a lot more formations for a lot of the reasons that you're talking about. So I think we're going to see him more. I think with him, it's getting adjusted to the different packages and the playbook as a whole, knowing where he needs to go on the field at a given time. That's a part that it is obviously tough to adjust to in the NFL as a whole, but especially with the new offense being installed. He missed some time at the end of camp with an illness, so I think that's what's holding him back. But I think each week we're going to see his snap count rise. But it was just interesting, the parallels that I saw between him and Huntington, because it's funny, obviously Huntington was an undrafted free agent, but it's funny that you mentioned the third round pick and everything, because the narrative really shifted quickly here in Michigan. It started out with, we gave up a couple picks and traded them to trade up and get this third round pick, and this guy wasn't supposed to be chosen till the 5th or 6th round. He's supposed to be a day 3 pick. But I was with you. I'm not a draft expert. I like following the draft, and I like it from the NFL perspective, but I don't necessarily have all the scouting reports on all those guys in college. But all those things that you just listed, and the willingness to do a lot of other things, and what I thought was an easy excuse to say, hey, he was in an Arkansas offense where he was maybe a little mislabeled as an X-receiver and running some of those routes in the route tree rather than being on the outside in an offense that is notoriously not very pass heavy. That all made sense to me, that he didn't necessarily have that big season, but he progressed from being a quarterback here locally at Unity Christian. Then he switched to receiver in college, so he hasn't played receiver for very long. Then he went to Hillsdale, which is not a notorious football school, and then made it to Arkansas, then to the pros. So when you see all that development, you think, man, there's got to be a lot of potential in this kid, but I guess not everybody felt that way. Thankfully, the Lions did. Same with Huntington. So I think both those guys are going to be guys to watch. And it's fun to see these guys develop and see these guys that, man, they were on the fringes. They didn't think they were going to make the team or factor in. And now they're both maybe going to be key contributors to their teams here.
Yeah, I love to geek out about, I don't want to call them fringe roster guys, because they are just roster guys. But this is what makes covering sports fun. For the casual fan, it may just be watching the game on Sunday with your buddies and having a good time with some cold ones and watching your team win. But I like following the stories. I like understanding the humanity behind the game. That's why I really enjoyed my interview with Huntington back in the spring. But yeah, you really took the words out of my mouth on Tesla. He went from a Division II college to Arkansas to the NFL in a period of 3 years. We can't expect him to be out of the gate running wild, but he is still being very impressive at going from, again, a Division II football level to playing against grown men at the highest level of the sport. It's very impressive from him.
It is indeed. And if we're going to get some cold ones, we're going over to your house because you got the refrigerator fixed. So we're ready to go. We're going to go to the Dobbins house here. But we appreciate you joining the show, Lane. We'll look forward to you reviewing the game with us afterwards. And we'll see how that game plays out. Obviously, the Lions are playing right now, so we'll have 2 games in between. But tell the people where they can follow you in between social media, Browns Wire, all that stuff here.
Okay, so I mentioned my Twitter earlier. The handle is not a word. It is Gapadawand NFL. Gapadawand is for lack of a better term, a meme in the Cleveland Browns community. It's from our Hugh Jackson days that I would love to forget. It is a reference to where our Dog Pound, our most devoted fan section, was supposed to have a banner that said Dog Pound. And in the most Cleveland Browns fashion possible, it was held up in the wrong order, spelling out Gapadawand. And then I just tagged on NFL to make myself sound more official. That is my Twitter handle. I believe I have my links to all of my Browns Wire content under my bio on there. I appreciate you guys listening in tonight. Ryan, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to be on here next week.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall, DDS, Calder Financial Group, Grand Management, Rydan Investments, JH Realty Partners, and Encore Business Group. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern on Jethro.fm.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.